March 11, 2025. What many thought impossible actually happened. Former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte was arrested under an ICC warrant at Manila's Ninoy Aquino International Airport. The world reacted instantly. For many, this was long overdue justice, while for others, it was foreign interference, an attack and a violation of Philippine sovereignty. Is this a victory for human rights or simply a political persecution? Can the ICC actually hold world leaders accountable, or will this case, just like so many others before it, drag on for years? Mabuhay! Earn Kapampangan, luwid kayo! Welcome to my channel, it's me Kirby Araullo, your friendly Pinoy historian. Now, just a friendly reminder, today's video, no matter what your political affiliation is or political views, this video is all about history, international law, and all about the facts about the ICC. This is not about spreading hate or misinformation. My goal is to break it all down so that we all have a better understanding of the bigger picture, because this is bigger than any politician. So if you're here to learn more and dig deeper to have a better understanding, then this video is for you. So let's begin with, what exactly is the ICC? The International Criminal Court, or the ICC, is the world's first permanent war crimes tribunal. It prosecutes genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. But how much power does it really have? Duterte's arrest is historic, but it is also raising a lot of big questions. Is the ICC interfering with Philippine sovereignty? Or is this long overdue justice for the families and the victims of Duterte's war on drugs? So in today's video, we'll explore how the ICC was created and why it exists. We'll look into why Duterte was arrested and what happens next. Ask questions like why some war criminals escape justice while others don't, and whether or not the ICC can truly hold the world's most powerful leaders accountable. And trust me, there's this one major loophole in the ICC that might actually change everything. So stick around till the end. But first, to truly understand the ICC, we have to go back to the end of World War II. The world had just witnessed horrors beyond imagination. Millions dead, cities in ruins, and the Holocaust exposing genocide on a scale unprecedented. So for the first time, the world agreed. War criminals couldn't just walk free. Justice had to be served. And the result? The Nuremberg trials, where top Nazi officials were prosecuted for crimes against humanity. Some were convicted, while others were executed. And for a moment, the world saw what international justice could look like. But Nuremberg was a one-time deal. It only addressed Nazi war crimes. And even the Tokyo trials the following year only addressed Japanese atrocities. So what about future war crimes? Now fast forward to the 1990s. Massacres in Yugoslavia, genocide in Rwanda, thousands were slaughtered while the world debated. The United Nations set up temporary war crimes tribunals specifically for these genocides, but since they were not permanent, they shut down after each case. So the question remained, why wait for the next genocide to happen? Why not create a permanent court? In July 1998, 120 countries came together and said, enough is enough. We need a permanent court for war crimes. And with that, the Rome Statute was born, officially creating the International Criminal Court, or the ICC. And by 2002, the court finally opened its doors, becoming the world's first permanent war crimes tribunal. But sadly, not everyone agreed, not everyone joined. As the world came together to create a new system of justice, some of the world's most powerful nations, the United States, China, and Russia, chose to walk away. And they didn't just decline. They refused to be held accountable. After all, signing on the ICC would mean admitting that their own actions, past and present, could be prosecuted as war crimes. I mean, just think about it. The US waged wars across Southeast Asia, starting with the Philippines, then Vietnam, and then later across the Middle East. China is accused of human rights violations in Tibet and Xinjiang, and recently Russia invaded Ukraine. So if they joined the ICC, their own leaders could be prosecuted and judged on the world stage. And so they opted out. And then here's where things get even messier. Countries can actually withdraw from the ICC to avoid prosecution. And that is exactly what the Philippines did in 2019 after the ICC started investigating Duterte's war on drugs. But wait, if the Philippines left the ICC, then how exactly is Duterte still being persecuted? Okay, so the ICC goes after the world's worst crimes against humanity, the bloodiest atrocities. But what exactly does that mean? And how does the ICC actually work? So the ICC doesn't just go after any crime. It focuses on the most serious crimes known to humanity. And they have 4 categories. First is genocide, when a group of people is deliberately targeted for extinction because of their ethnicity, religion, or nationality. I mean, think of the Holocaust or what happened to Rwanda. Genocide is the ultimate hate crime. And then, there's crimes against humanity, or the widespread, systematic attacks against civilians. And this is the charge Duterte is facing. It includes things like murder, torture, and enforced disappearances. In other words, deliberate actions, and not accidents of war. And then you've got war crimes. These are serious violations of the rules of war, like targeting civilians, bombing hospitals, or recruiting child soldiers. Because even in war, there are laws, and breaking them would land you in The Hague. And finally, there's the crimes of aggression, when a country invades or attacks another country without legal justification. Any textbook example of this is Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But now here's the catch. The ICC cannot just go around arresting people. The ICC follows a strict process, and there are actually only 3 ways a case can land on The Hague. Sometimes the country itself can ask the ICC to step in, like when Uganda referred the warlord Joseph Kony. In other cases, it is the victims and their families who lead the charge. And that is what happened in the case against Duterte. Survivors and community advocates pushed for accountability, and their efforts built up enough evidence to move the process forward. Their voices helped bring the issue to the ICC's attention and build the foundation for a thorough investigation. And then, there are cases that are so big and complex or politically sensitive that the United Nations Security Council steps in, like with Sudan's Omar al-Bashir. But even then, justice can be slow. In fact, al-Bashir is still dodging trial to this day. If the ICC was meant to hold world leaders accountable, then why do some still seem untouchable? Why does someone like Vladimir Putin have an arrest warrant for years, yet still walk free? And how did Duterte ended up in custody while so many others evade justice? Sadly, not every country recognizes the ICC's authority. As mentioned earlier, the United States, China, and Russia never joined. The Philippines withdrew in 2019, but the case against Duterte was able to move forward because the alleged crimes happened while the country was still a member. The ICC also relies on cooperation. For example, Sudan refused to hand over Omar al-Bashir for over a decade. Now, Vladimir Putin also has a warrant against him, but he just avoids traveling to ICC member countries to dodge arrest. Meanwhile, Duterte's case moved forward because the timing lined up. International pressure was high, and the Philippines cooperated, at least enough for the arrest to happen. So why was Duterte arrested while others like Putin avoided justice? It all comes down to timing, cooperation, and international pressure. And after many years of mounting pressure and speculation, Rodrigo Duterte is now in ICC custody, and he was charged with crimes against humanity over his bloody war on drugs and 1,000 lives lost. The historic arrest marks a dramatic turning point in a case many thought would never move forward. For years, critics wondered if Duterte would ever face justice. So what happens next? Will the Punisher be punished? No, not yet. Not quite. Duterte's arrest is just the beginning, and it's a long process. An arrest made simply means that there's enough evidence to move the case forward. The ICC process is very strict and methodical. In fact, every charge must go through a pre-trial phase before proceeding to a full trial. And Duterte's case, like all the others at the ICC, will be judged based on the evidence, law, and accountability. On March 14, 2025, Duterte made his first appearance before the ICC via video from detention. And this is when the court formally presented Duterte with the charges of crimes against humanity. And coming up next in this ongoing trial, Duterte is scheduled for a pre-trial hearing on September 23, 2025. And this step is crucial. This is the moment when the ICC judges will review the evidence and decide whether or not the case should proceed to a full trial. And if they don't find the case strong enough against Duterte, it could actually be dismissed altogether. And this has happened before, like when the case against Kenyatta of Kenya was dropped in 2015 during the pre-trial stage. But if the case against Duterte moves forward, and if Duterte is ultimately convicted, he could actually face life in prison for crimes against humanity. But here's the catch. ICC trials do not happen overnight. It's a very long process. Some cases drag on for years, caught in a maze of legal challenges, political interference, and delays in gathering evidence. And let's not forget, Duterte's allies are not just going to sit back and watch. They'll fight tooth and nail, question the process, attack the ICC, and they will try their best to sway public opinion at every turn. But this case goes far beyond just one man. It is not only about Duterte. This is about whether or not the ICC can actually accomplish what it was created to do, to hold the most powerful accountable. Or will it end up showing the world that even today, some leaders can still bend justice? So, can Duterte actually be convicted? And if so, what does that mean for the Philippines? Now, this brings us to the bigger question. Does the ICC actually work? Or is it just a court with no real power? Now, to answer that, let us look at what the ICC has actually done. Back in 2012, the ICC secured its very first conviction. Thomas Lubanga was found guilty of using child soldiers in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And then in 2023, it made global headlines once again by issuing an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin. In fact, Putin became the very first leader of a permanent member of the UN Security Council to be indicted by the ICC while still in office. And this is historically rare and significant. And now, in 2025, Rodrigo Duterte becomes the first leader from Southeast Asia to be taken into ICC custody, facing charges of crimes against humanity. These cases reminds us that while the ICC faced real limitations, it's not just a symbolic institution. That when conditions actually align, when there's enough evidence, international pressure, and cooperation, the ICC can act, even against some of the world's most powerful people. So yes, the ICC can prosecute or go after the world's most powerful people. But here is where things get complicated and messy. The ICC does not have its own police force. It depends entirely on the countries to make the arrest, on their cooperation. And if a government refuses to cooperate, well then, there's not much the ICC can do. Now of course, the ICC is not perfect. Take for example, Sudan's Omar al-Bashir. An arrest warrant was issued in 2009, but Sudan refused to surrender him for over a decade, even long after Omar al-Bashir was ousted from power. Other cases like those of Laurent Gbagbo and Jean-Pierre Bemba have also dragged on for over a decade due to legal delays and political pushback. Nevertheless, despite these flaws, Duterte's arrest shows that international justice is possible. It sends a clear message that even the world's most powerful leaders are not above the law. And whether or not Duterte is convicted, the case against him may set a precedent for future leaders. And that is exactly what makes this moment so historically important. The ICC is not perfect. It's far from perfect. But let's be honest, no system is perfect. Nevertheless, Duterte's arrest is a historic moment. It shows the world that no leader, no matter how powerful or rich, is beyond the reach of justice. And now, the world is watching. No matter where you stand on this issue, no matter your political affiliation, one thing is clear. This is a step towards justice, a step forward for human rights. Whether Duterte is ultimately found guilty or not, the fact that this process is actually happening, the fact that the victims are finally being heard, is actually a necessary step towards building a world where genuine peace and justice are more than just words, but part of our everyday reality. Because justice shouldn't be a privilege reserved for the rich or the powerful. It should be something that every person, no matter their status, can actually count on. Because justice should not be a distant dream. It should be the quiet and steady heartbeat of every society. Something we all breathe and live with, not something we have to beg for. And let's be honest, isn't that the kind of world that we all want our children and grandchildren to inherit? So what do you think? I want to hear from you. Should the ICC have more power to hold world leaders accountable? Or do its limitations actually serve a purpose? Let us know in the comments below. But please, let us keep the conversations thoughtful and respectful. Let us keep it rooted in truth and understanding, genuine understanding, so that we can all better understand what justice truly means beyond the politics and the noise. And if you want to see how justice can actually be forgotten, how entire cities and the suffering of 1 million people can just vanish from global memory, make sure to watch my video on the Battle of Manila in 1945, one of the worst atrocities of World War II. Yet the world barely remembers and barely talks about. A majestic city reduced to ashes, 100,000 innocent civilians dead. But their stories deserve to be remembered and their truth deserve to finally be heard. Maraming salamat po o in Kapampangan dakal pong salamat kayo kongan and in Binisaya daghang salamat sa inyong tanan. And in Bahasa Sug magsukol tuod kay mo. See you next time when Tagalog kita kits and in Kapampangan, Mikitix and in Binisaya, kita aita. And in French, one of the languages in the ICC, a bientôt.